there, then of course this is now something that I'm now paying attention to. That buyer didn't capitulate. And if the buyer didn't capitulate, then one of the things I'm now aware of is that I'll buy another bottom edge until the buyer shows me what they want to do. So I'll buy another bottom edge, and if it doesn't buy a bottom edge, we're ready to go, right? If it does buy a bottom edge, we're not ready to go. So I'll be starting to watch these types of stories depending upon how the volume reacts to certain things. Very similar to what we talked about this morning when we were talking about oil crack spread, and when we were talking about the 2s 10s relationship to the 10s 30s in this morning's classroom. We obviously want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the response that we get from certain things. It's not about it has to always do this. It doesn't always have to do that. So when I see sellers coming in too aggressively in certain locations, I get more excited about the possibility of making a big move, because when sellers get overcommitted into a move, I like that, especially on that last gold leg higher. When sellers get overcommitted to the gold leg higher, I was in nirvana in that situation. So you can see that this is what happened to gold for that second leg higher. During that first leg, we can see that the volume ran out of steam here, and a lot of selling came in here. And then we got value with a rejected low. We got the max switched on, and obviously Max is now going after those sellers. Max is going after those sellers, all those aggressive volume sellers that all poured in thinking that this was the top edge. And why wouldn't they think that this was it? Why wouldn't they think? Because the volume had diverged significantly to give them that thought process. And obviously the idea is if we can now get those guys upside down, they may well capitulate, which eventually took place when we got that break higher. You can see all those sellers capitulated with a big reversal trade, which gave us the huge profit that we made then on that next swing, correct? Beautiful, right? Absolutely beautiful. So when we started to recognize that storyline, you can see Max came back in again at lower prices, but look how much selling is in that. See how much selling is in that, Paul? There's too many sellers. So because there's too many sellers in this, because there's a lot of sellers, I'm not expecting this price to be marked up just yet, because why would you want to? But obviously when we get another new low, I'm just going to buy again, which I did. Just going to buy again. And the hope is, of course, that we obviously get a capitulation by these sellers. Now, if obviously the price goes up to the top edge and we don't get the capitulation that we're looking for, and we don't get the huge break higher, then of course we're going to be just joining in a short trade. So we're always watching for the capitulation. We're always watching to see once these sellers once these sellers are under pressure, what do they do at higher prices? In other words, we start watching these higher highs up here, for example, every time we get a new level, we start watching to see if they start throwing away their positions. It's not about just recognizing a divergence and that's your kind of job done. It's about reading how many sellers are coming in. If there's a lot of sellers, I mean, when I saw this amount of sellers coming in, for example, on this down move, I'm not expecting that that's going to be it, Paul. I expect it to go down another leg. In fact, with that amount of sellers that came in a second leg here, I fully expected a third leg. I fully expected if I was going to be buying it again with Max, I'd be buying below there. So in some ways, I was a little bit surprised that this buy has gone on to make some reasonable cash on this phase. But it is what it is. You just do what you do. You still trade what you're trading, right? So what I would now expect to see is I would expect to see a weakness in the buying at higher prices because the buyers are now seeing the amount of selling coming in. But obviously what I wouldn't expect to see is I wouldn't expect to see this big surge of buying. If I do see a big surge of buying up and through, and it's starting to build already, that there's a few buyers that came in on that uptick there, see that? So this might well still be a little bit more bullish than you might think. But what I'd like to see is I'd like to see no buyers coming in, and that would give you evidence that this is a flip. This is going to flip over, and we're going to start seeing a very, very easy top edge sell opportunity. You can see that that's made a little bit higher high there. See it? See how it's made that little bit of a higher high, even though the price is the same? So we can already recognize that this still has enough buyers. There's a capitulation of some of those sellers in the background. Remember, a lot of those sellers came in on these candles here. So there was a little bit of a capitulation on those sells, wasn't it? There was a little bit of a capitulation there on that candle. You can see it's dropped back inside again. So what we're really wanting to see is that the sellers have more confidence in the up move, so that when the sellers have more confidence, the buyers are going to pick up on that, and it's going to start diverging into those high prints. But I think there's still enough room in this to take it back up towards the top edges here, but you're judging by the amount of volume that's coming in those upticks. Response reactions, isn't it? It's always about that. That's what you do when you're a crack spread trader. And there's the buy response that we thought was going to happen, guys. Pretty impressive, isn't it? I said I expected a little bit higher. Just as I took away the chart, by the way, guys, the price just spiked higher. There it is there. So I said I would expect it a little bit higher. We've just spiked it higher. And that's just because I was reading. That's just because I was reading the volume as it was coming in. Every time we went into the uptick, the sellers were throwing away the price. Sellers were chucking it. So they were coming up into that divergent top edge. And obviously this is becoming a short term. This is quite solid as a short term, but obviously this is, there it goes. There's the stops. That's what we would want to see. And there's a perfect trade. And I've just been long from 1780s. It's just traded a high price there of 1783s. $300 profit, guys. $300 more profit. Pretty good, right? And obviously an exit for me as the volumes diverged into that story. So an exit for me for the time being. And another $300 profitable trade live called on the right-hand edge, guys. Nothing wrong with that.